Okay, if commissioners will take their seats, we will begin.
Sign is in there,
In where?
in that
In
file.
that mess?
Okay. I think we have a quorum of both boards together, so we'll call to order the joint session of the Planning and Zoning Commissions at 6:08 p.m. We have, there you go. Okay, we have a special guest with us, special guests with us tonight, and I think the primary thrust of tonight's meeting is going to be for our guests to give us an overview of their operations, and then open it to the floor to commissioners for both boards to ask questions and see what kind of information we can get as we continue our process of drafting the regulations. Just some housekeeping. As you know, the Planning Commission has its regular session at 7 p.m. tonight, which we have to convene on time. So if we still have questions and people want to hang around or have more discussion, we can always recess the meeting and reconvene afterward. I'm not sure how the timing is going to work on that, but it is a potential possibility if people want to hang around and spend more time on the subject. Okay, with that, I will ask Travis Tangretti to come forward. You can either speak at the podium, or if you want to take a seat at the table there, whatever's more comfortable for you. And just give us your name and address and talk into the microphone.
Hello, my name is Travis Tangretti. I live here in Brookfield, Connecticut. I am a founder of Better Healing with some partners. I'm the only representative here today. And I'm here to kind of help all of us get some basic understanding of the Connecticut medical marijuana program, what's happened in the last 4 to 5 years, and currently what's happening with the patient count, demand, and primarily what's happening here in Fairfield County and what we anticipate to happen over the next few months. So I've kept a good relationship here with the town of Stratford over the past year as far as lending an olive branch to always come in, being asked questions, provide some answers, and hope just to kind of continuously create some education here on a local level and just create some clarity. So what we are doing here is we're looking to put a dispensary in Fairfield County. The Connecticut Medical Marijuana Program is on its 5th year or so. The numbers are very disparaging as far as where the dispensaries are located in the state of Connecticut. There are 8 active dispensaries. The dispensaries are located in South Windsor, Hartford, Bristol. Last round, there was 2 dispensaries awarded in Milford. There's one in Bethel. There's one in Uncasville. Fairfield County, to give you some numbers, and all this is public information. Anything past here, I can tell you, you could go on to the state of Connecticut's medical marijuana program site. It's highly organized and efficient, and it gives you daily patient counts to let you know exactly where the patients are coming from. To kind of quickly give you an overview, Windham County has 665 patients. Holland has 896. New London, 2,035. Middlesex, 1,125. Litchfield, 1,151. New Haven has 4,341. Hartford has 4,648. And Fairfield County has 3,816. So Fairfield County has the 3rd largest population of patients.
What was that number?
3,816. And this was as of 6/18/2017. The concern is that the only dispensary in Fairfield County is located in Bethel. So patients have been driving very, very far for their medicine. Before last round, there was supposed to be an RFA came out from the state of Connecticut, and it was specifically for Fairfield and New Haven County. 3 dispensaries were awarded licenses. 1 dispensary in Waterbury and 2 dispensaries in Milford. We don't really understand why there was 2 dispensaries in Milford. But what we do here is that there's a lot of patients that are complaining and still looking for better ease of access into the program. And that's what we're about. We're trying to provide patients ease of access for medical marijuana. There's a stigma right now, of course, that there is a percentage of the population that are here just because going into the program because they recreationally like to smoke marijuana or get high, or they're young, or they're kids. It's not the case. And I'll tell you about the other business that we've done to kind of show that. What's happening in Connecticut right now is that because these patients are having to drive so far and the demand is so high, we know that there's going to be an RFA for Fairfield County. It wasn't properly distributed last year, having to in Milford. Since that time, Better Healing, we've made a relationship with the state of Connecticut, the commissioner's office, and we are aware that the state of Connecticut is in its infancy as compared to the other markets out west. But what's happening is that there's a lack of education. The program here has been going on for 5 years, but there's still the stigma that it's kids, it's people wanting to get high, and it's not. So what we've done is we've actually created a separate business called Relief Medical Center. I think everyone here may have received a small card about Relief Medical Center. What we're doing is there's about 600 doctors that are licensed in the state of Connecticut. So I'll kind of tell you about how do you become a medical marijuana patient. Is anyone curious about that? Yeah?
Yes.
So I'll tell you the process. On the back of the card, Connecticut is very, very strict. They are one of the. Does anyone need one? Anyone? So Connecticut is one of the most strict states in the country. We did not follow the guidelines of Colorado. We did not follow the guidelines of California. It's very strict. Medical marijuana program is ran exactly the same as a Walgreens, a Rite Aid. It's the same system. It's the same inventory controls. It's the same system that you would use if you're a pharmacist in Hartford Hospital working the floor, or if you're a pharmacist working in the dispensary. It's the same job. On the back of the card are all the specific conditions that Connecticut deems you to qualify into the program.
So these are conditions a patient would have to have.
You have to have specifically qualified. So what we did was, yes.
They actually added this year trigeminal neurology.
So what's interesting is that they added 7 conditions are in limbo right now. 4 conditions were passed in February. 3 conditions were actually passed 2 weeks ago. Neuralgia.
I have trigeminal neurology.
And what's interesting is if you could tell, everything is, we'll say, intractable, because what this is it's lawyers, it's the attorneys. It's pretty much saying that Connecticut is being very strict by saying intractable means it's chronic pain that never goes away. It's there every day, nonstop. But what's happening is the conditions last week that came out were migraines, headaches. It's going to take about a year for these conditions to become formal. All the conditions in the back of this card are formal right now. So to go back to the state of Connecticut, we're in our 5th year. Many people still don't know there's medical marijuana here in Connecticut. We met with the state. We all probably know that we're in the state has some money problems. There's hiring freezes. The state is not spending money right now to create awareness. They're not going to be putting out billboards and media campaigns and community awareness and saying, are you tired of taking opiates? Do you have chronic pain? Are you addicted to these opiates? They're not doing that. We took that job on. So in the last year, we developed a Relief Medical Center. We have 4 locations, and what we do is we have a network of licensed physicians and APRNs that are certified to meet with patients. Because what happens right now is there's about 600 physicians that registered themselves with the state of Connecticut. So to register yourself with the state of Connecticut, you have to have an active license, a DEA license, and be able to certify patients. But just because there's 600 doctors that did that, doesn't mean that they're telling their patients. Primary care physicians are still not telling their patients that there's methods of alternative care. There's physicians and APRNs willing to meet with patients who have become educated and for whatever reasons want to tell patients about alternative care. We have found these physicians and APRNs, and they meet with our patients. Just today, we dropped about 250,000 postcards in the state of Connecticut. Stratford was one of the zones. So when you go home today, you'll probably see in your mailbox very tasteful advertising, because that's what the state of Connecticut has asked us to do, tasteful medical marijuana advertisements. Medical marijuana evaluations, compassionate care for seniors or veterans, and it's just to make an appointment and see one of our doctors. If you have one of these conditions on the back, if you have, today I just came from the Brantford office. We certified 15 patients today into the program. I could tell you that it was Parkinson's, it was wasting syndrome, it was RSD. There was one PTSD patient. The PTSD patient was a veteran. All the patients tell us, thank you. Our primary care is not giving us this opportunity. All they're doing is giving us the opiates, the opiates, the opiates. So we are going to spend our time, our dollars in educating Connecticut. Keep letting people know that there's alternatives. We're just here to put you in front of another physician or APRN to learn more. After you meet with a physician or APRN, and if you have one of these conditions, they enter you into the program. Right now, you would receive a temporary certificate within the 10 to 14 business days. Because there's such a demand, the state of Connecticut is actually overwhelmed. They're behind. Right now, they're on about day 18. Once you receive your temporary certificate, you could go to a dispensary. You cannot just go to any dispensary you want. At the time of your evaluation, you're actually assigned to a dispensary. Most of the time, if you're a patient, you choose the dispensary based on your demographic, how far it is. What's happening right now is we have 4,000 patients in Fairfield County that have to drive 40 to 50 miles just to receive their medicine. So, we are looking to create good relationships with local towns and put one of our dispensaries in a town that is welcoming us. We want to create a good community effort with the local organizations in town. We want to be giving back to the town. But most importantly, when I say we want to be welcome, is because we want to be out in the front helping people. This is about medical marijuana. This is not about recreation. All of our dispensary, it's appointments only. We don't allow people just to show up at the door. It's patient care. Most of our patients are coming in with wheelchairs, or they need help getting in, and some patients, they need to be in the whole office by the dispensary by themselves. They need 30 minutes because they're overwhelmed. They want to speak to the pharmacist. They want a consistent product. Does anyone have questions about the product? So the product is all grown here in Connecticut. There's 4 growers here in Connecticut, and all the product is triple tested, goes to labs, make sure that there's no pesticides, all the levels, whether it's THC, which is a component of marijuana that gives you the high effect, or if it's CBD, which CBD is the large component that is for the pain. There's a lot of studies right now that is showing that CBD is what's helping chronic trauma. The NFL, the Players Association in the NFL right now, is saying that the NFL players should be using CBD before practices and games because it helps alleviate concussions. The biggest thing that I think that you could take away from the discussion about product is that most of the patients in the dispensary, they don't want to get high. There's products, whether it's flour or whether it's oils or whether it's lotions, that don't have THC. The growers here have done a phenomenal job as far as genetically lowering the THC so that you don't feel the effects of getting high, but there's still CBD. The CBD is what helps with the chronic pain. To give you an example, there's RSD. RSD is when your nerve endings tell your brain false information. For any of the ailments to get passed, it goes to the state of Connecticut. There's a board of physicians, 4 physicians there, and they hear what patients, their stories. And they're the patients saying, please pass my condition. RSD is something that can happen to anyone. To kind of give you a quick story, and kind of why I started to get into this is I saw how something could happen to anyone. My mother, my sister. There was a mother with her daughter. Her daughter was now in her 30s. The daughter was playing soccer when she was 6 years old, kicked the soccer ball, and went down to the ground. Bless you. She developed RSD, which is her nerve endings in her foot told her brain that her foot was broken. It was not. Completely fine. Has all the pain and ailment as if she did have a broken foot. The RSD spread throughout her body. She's now 30 years old, and her nerve endings continuously tell her brain information that's false. She's came in with medical records this high, has been given every drug, opiate that the doctors could give. Suicidal, has done gone through all of that, and has said, I only sleep when I pass out from the pain, 20 to 30-minute intervals a day, and I know that marijuana helps me. It's not going to get rid of my RSD, and she would say, you doctors know that, but it helps provide me some clarity. It helps me sleep more than 20 to 30 minutes. It helps me not want to be suicidal for an ailment that I have that I know I'm not getting rid of. The older lady that is washing dishes, dishwasher door was open, slipped on some soap, hit her elbow against her dishwasher, 72 years old, RSD, her nerve endings tell her brain that her arm is broken. All the doctors could give her are opiates. This little old lady's pleading, please. Like, I don't want opiates. Since you've been giving me opiates, I can't function. I can't think. I'm a zombie. My grandson gave me marijuana. It helps. It's not getting rid of it, but it helps. No one is here saying that marijuana is going to cure cancer, get rid of AIDS, get rid of all of your Parkinson's disease, get rid of your sores. No, it's not. But it's the patients today that are saying it helps. It's helping me. And they're learning about it from experience. The doctors, the physicians, it's starting to become curriculum right now in the universities. Yale, Quinnipiac, Sacred Heart, they're starting to teach their younger students about marijuana. They have to. They're learning the psycho effects, the neurologic effects of when you use marijuana. There's no avoiding it now. Hospitals have been administering synthetic forms of marijuana for 50 years. There's Miranol for leukemia patients to help your appetite. There's different forms. There's clinical tests right now for sativas that they're going to be giving in needles in hospitals. It's been going on. We're just trying to provide it safely and easy for patients. And that's kind of who we are and what we do.
Okay, well, thank you. Just a word of caution, if you will. I'm not sure what your plans are, if you ever had planning in any expansion or applying for something here in Stratford should we adopt the regulations, but just bear in mind, members, as you ask questions, that there's a potential that in the years to come that you might. So just, use the appropriate caution on asking some questions. But if I could start it out there, I just want to ask a little bit more about you had touched a little bit on the product itself and the different forms it takes. I know you mentioned the oils and the different things like that. Is the majority of it the smokable that marijuana that people are familiar with, or does it come in other types of pill form? What are the different types of product that you actually do carry at one of your facilities?
So the first thing I can tell you is all the inventory menus, it's all public. Mm-hmm. So on every dispensary active, if you could go onto the website, you could see all the different products, the pricing, but has to be different forms. If you have cancer of the lungs, you can't smoke it. So there's forms of capsules. Many patients that have chronic pain, they don't want to smoke it, they don't want to get high, but they figured out that if they take one pill a day that has a certain dosage of CBD, that it helps them. There's tinctures, which if you're familiar with Listerine breath strips, you could put a breath strip on your tongue. There's lotions. If you have damage to your nerve tissue, your spinal cord, you could be putting lotion. Many patients that have back problems, spinal cord, there's actually honey. They can take a teaspoon of honey, Again, there could be no THC in it, and they'll put it in tea, so you could drink it with tea. There's edibles. There's, as far as there's saltine crackers. There's cookies. There's jams. Everything starts, though, from the flower. And then the flower is broken down into the other forms. Everything is made, like I said, in the grows here in Connecticut. So you have the flour, you have oils, you have shatter, which is our concentrates like waxes. There's lotions, there's tinctures, there's sprays. So if you wanted like a mouth spray, you could use a mouth spray. What you'd want to think about is if you're a patient and you have pain, you need the medicine throughout the day, just like if you were taking Advil or Aleve or antibiotics, but you still have to function. You still have to go to work. You still have to drive. You still have to be a mother, be a father, have your role. So there's different forms for different effects. If you're taking something in the morning, you're taking something in midday, if you need something at night, and that depends on how you're taking it in the form.
Just looking at the clock, folks, we have about 30 minutes left, so let's start with questions and answers. Yeah.
Which is very important. All of the product comes from the grow, packaged and sealed.
Mm-hmm.
So once it goes to the laboratories, it is tested, it is sealed, it is contained, and it is delivered then to the dispensaries. It is illegal in the state of Connecticut for a dispensary to have open containers to show the product for contamination. So everything is sealed and protected. Nothing is open.
Okay, Mrs. Pepin will start and work our way down the...
I have a couple questions. First of all, who produces the oils? The growers do that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the state of Connecticut is very strict as far as all of the product has to be manufactured here. So if we get into, let's say, the tax classification, essentially, growers, they're seen as, they're in agriculture. That's how they're seen. They're in agriculture and manufacturing. The product is made here in Connecticut. It starts with flower. You're growing from a seed. Once it becomes a mature plant, there's different ways, whether it's heating and extraction.
But the growers do that.
The growers.
So the dispensary just gets all the products, like you said, wrapped up and tested.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many? Can I ask you what your background is?
Sure. My background is finance.
Okay. And how many of these do you actually have? You have all those?
Yeah, these are open right now as far as these are the doctor evaluation offices.
Oh, so those are your dispensaries? New Haven, Waterbury, Branford, and Old Lyme?
No, these are doctor's offices.
Right, okay.
So this is where we're helping the patients get the cards. As far as better hearing,
Correct.
we're looking to put a dispensary here in Connecticut.
Oh, so you started with this?
We started with this as far as to help Connecticut just get the patient count up. We do have some partners right now that are existing owners of dispensaries, which I can't really disclose, that are going to be partnering with us to open up our dispensary.
Now, is this in insurance companies pay for this?
No,
Or
because the federal government has not endorsed this, this is all a private.
Okay. So then if the doctor doesn't, suggest it or whatever to a patient, then they can come to you under this Relief Medical Center and kind of get approved under one of your doctors.
Correct. Just from today, from all of our postcards coming out, I was actually letting Jay listen to some voicemails. It's amazing because you're having patients, elderly, call and say, wow, I received a card in the mail. I didn't know there was a program. My doctor hasn't told me. I'd love to kind of come and meet with the doctor. Because what's happening is that we could create all of the formal education, get over the awareness, but what I truly feel helps is patients telling other patients. It would be someone like Mr. Watson, who possibly experiences using medical marijuana, maybe sees a benefit, but then maybe knows someone else that experiences your same condition and says, hey, listen, forget what your doctor or what you're hearing. I've used this. I've tried it. It's been helping me. And that's what we're seeing is really spreading the word, and why we're getting patients kind of eager to get to us is because they're saying, my doctor isn't telling me. It was our group. When you have one of these conditions, typically you're in support groups and you're meeting. And that's where we're starting a lot of our education, meeting with epilepsy groups and Parkinson's groups and Crohn's disease here in Connecticut. And we're bringing some of our patients there that are speaking for us. And that's kind of what we do with Relief Medical. It's our doctors that are speaking. It's our patients that are helping educate. I could sit up here and answer the questions all day long. But at some other event, if you'd like, we could bring patients. We could bring physicians and doctors. So then they could truly tell you their experience and their stories as well.
So what you're saying is most of it is like a cash kind of deal at these dispensaries.
At
Is
the
that correct?
dispensary, it's
So-
all cash or debit. At
Okay.
the doctor evaluation, we could take credit because it's truly just a doctor's office visit.
Office visit.
But yeah, the dispensary is only cash or debit.
Okay. Those are all the questions I
And
have.
we're
Thank-
hoping that things change with
Yeah.
the banking industry, and
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Giuliano, you want anything?
At this point in time, Chairman Solhavy, I'll pass.
Okay, Mr. Watson?
I who? This working? Yeah, I always have a million questions, but when you talk about essentially going into retail, and you mentioned your partners, we had questions, we've been discussing it in previous times. Are you pre-certified to run these retail by the state before you even go to the local towns?
Well, yeah, what I can't tell you is the RFA process is incredibly difficult. It's highly, highly competitive. They're requesting, just forget the background checks and audited financials and...
No, I've read up on it.
Yeah.
My real question is, in terms of you interfacing with us, coming to us for approvals, anybody who comes to us, we should expect that they're already pre-certified?
Sure.
That you'll already have gotten all your ducks in a row, all your financing, all your approvals from the state.
Sure.
So it's actually a decision that we have to make between the two parties. That was a question we weren't sure about the last time we discussed this. The other question, and this is a harder question, I know it's changing quickly. We have an opioid crisis, as does every town in this nation. My assumption is that there is going to be an interface with any clinic eventually, long-term, for this as a part of a solution for the opioid crisis, as an alternative. I guess my question to you is, how do you anticipate interfacing with that?
Well,
have you spoken with any rehab programs? Are you dealing directly with people who've come to the other side of that situation? Are you seeing medical people who essentially are one step from being part of the opioid problem? I know that you're dealing here with a lot of pain, and traditional medicine has said, give them painkillers. Well, it's another name for an opioid. So
what I can tell you is, from what I've heard from our physicians and APRNs, and every physician APRN that we hire, we only hire with a why of why they want to do this. They're either working with the opiate crisis right now. Cynthia Brown, who's one of our physicians, works at St. Francis Oncology Department. There's actually a study right now in the hospice wing as far as them doing research by providing marijuana to some of their patients in the program, because they're starting to do the research to see how it affects their opiate population. I did hear, as far as over the last 20 years, of why Connecticut is in the state of the crisis is, it opened it up to chronic pain. So it was essentially anyone who has chronic pain could justify getting some type of prescription or sitting in front of a doctor and asking for pills. We don't see it happening with medical marijuana because it's so strict. As you can tell, it's very, very specific. We actually turned down a patient today. A patient came in, clinical arthritis, came in, machine on her hand, couldn't move it, on medications, documentation, but it's not specific. It's not the specific arthritis that the state of Connecticut has put forward, so we had to deny her. We're not seeing Connecticut using the medical marijuana program as kind of the gateway for people just to have access. It's very strict. It's very strict.
And one final question. I saw in your card that you mentioned veterans. I know that PTSD is this has become one of the major tools for vets dealing with PTSD. I guess I want to kind of combine that with the potential for what would be the market when or if Stratford were to ever have a clinic. How far out would we be looking? Are we looking 40 miles from Stratford as a possible market? Are we going to end up being able to service just in our immediate local towns?
I could talk to you about let's say the economic development of it. As far as right now, dispensaries are holding, let's just say, on an average, 2,500 to 3,000 patients. Let's say in 2016, an average dispensary doing about 5 to 6.5 million. Projections this year are kind of going at about 8 to 9 million, just based on forecasting. We see this as an opportunity for any town. We know some surrounding towns that we've been meeting with are already adopting their regulations. We were just in Westport a few weeks ago. They're starting to move some things along. Norwalk has lifted things. Stratford has as well. How the state of Connecticut reads is that it's 1,500 feet from a place of worship, schools, and churches. What we do is, when we had our application last round, we actually go out into the community and we start here. I started my conversation by saying we need to be welcome. It's not a want, it's a need. The only way to be successful in a town is to be welcome. We want to go out into the community and form non-opposition prior. We want to go out and say, okay, we're looking to develop this area, possibly maybe in an industrial area or a non-retail area, or maybe there hasn't been much traffic. Maybe you're looking to develop.
I guess my question is, Stratford has a 50,000 population. Could we sustain with just our local population a clinic?
Most likely, but I don't think you need to. I think you're going to have some people coming in from Fairfield area, some a little bit from Bridgeport. You'll be getting some surrounding towns that come through. We feel that Stratford is geographically positioned very well for a dispensary. Typically, where patients don't like to go to is they don't want to go to the big cities. They don't want to be going into Hartford. They don't want to be going into Bridgeport. They don't want to be going into Norwalk. They don't want to be going into Stratford. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of parking problems and just overall congestion. So we looked at Stratford just geographically on a map, and we feel that it's positioned well. Could it sustain with its own population? Possibly. But we don't feel that it's going to need to. You're going to get some influx from a few other towns, which will help drive some of the development in the economy as well.
Okay, Madam Chair, again, we have about 20 minutes, so just let you know.
I actually have 3 questions, mostly around location and security. The first, and you started to talk about it a little bit. I visited one of the locations in the Milford area, and it was in a very retail, unassuming, next to a lawyer, holistic wellness place. You couldn't tell it was there. In your opinion, if you were to open up a location, dispensary, where would be the ideal location? What would be the attributes that you would be looking for?
So I'll kind of give you the combination. I'll touch on security as well. Our plans last round was to have a standalone building. We believe in a standalone building.
I'm just going to, if you could use the mic just a little bit so they could hear.
We believe in a standalone building for security reasons, for privacy, for parking, and overall just we'd like to control. We don't feel that being in a strip mall is beneficial to the patients, but it works. It's accessible. Other dispensaries have done it. As far as the big security is the transportation of product, deliveries. We're looking for what we feel is an ideal site is a bank. We'd be looking to take over an old bank and kind of make that our dispensary. We're not looking to have one store in an outlet. The trucks come in, we see that having the Sallyport, the delivery, having the trucks come all the way in, closing the Sallyport. We have on-site security for the deliveries, and it's always, you play the tricks as far as when they're coming, the hours, but we feel the standalone building is the best way to go. I'm familiar with the one on New Haven Avenue. What I can tell you is that there was 8 applicants on that one location. We didn't feel that location was a good one, just due to there was a lot of people in Milford that had complained. There was a lot of opposition for those dispensaries in Milford, but they were still awarded, especially on Boston Post Road. That dispensary had a lot of opposition. Maybe you had read about it in the papers, and that's why we have learned we want to get out there ahead of it. We know we need to be welcome. We want to be getting letters of non-opposition from residents. Wherever, let's say, Stratford chose where you feel is a good area, maybe due to privacy or development, we would go around and canvass that area. We would ask residents, their opinions, their survey, what they feel. We would help educate those residents as well. And we'd also go to the local business owners and ask them how it will affect their business as well. Because we want thumbs up from everyone. And if we could get thumbs up from the neighborhood and the surrounding community, then we feel that we've already checked some boxes as far as doing the right thing.
Now, let me take you back a little bit. Standalone buildings, as you say, a old bank would be ideal. Old banks or former banks are not usually located in industrial zones. So my question is, if we were to look at this, would a preferred area be a commercial zone or an industrial zone where it's just, there's very little residents, it's mostly other office or businesses?
We could probably sit around the table and go around about the pros and cons of each. If you're looking in an industrial area, maybe that's an area of Stratford that there's not too much development. Maybe there's not so much traffic. Maybe it's something that you are looking to develop. The dispensary there, $6 to $8 million business there with people coming every day will drive that area. At the same time, a bank will be in a retail area, but usually that means that you're on a major interstate. You're not going to have congestion or traffic issues, which is okay. It's going to be public, which people feel good about. And the bank, it helps a lot with the security because it's already enforced. There's already a vault for the product. It's already usually steel and the ceilings are done right. And eventually Connecticut will be going into the windows because it's in the regulations, just like the Rite Aids or pharmacies where you could have teller windows, where you could drive up to the dispensary if you made your prescription prior and go to the window just like you would pick up your other medicine. So a bank would be ideal for privacy, accessibility, security, but an industrial area will serve just fine as well. But more about the economic development in an industrial area or an area where there's not too much activity right now.
Let me move on to my second part of security. Now, you did talk a little bit about the security, and you can add to it in terms of the physical security, and you've done that. But I'm also interested in how does that, when the person receives the product, and not disparaging them, is there any security that then protects that product from not being dispensed and resold or reused so that it filtrates into the neighborhood?
No. That's the best answer I could give as far as there's always going to be a secondary market, and that's kind of what we call it. It's not happening at the dispensary level as far as product going out the back door, the growers doing that. But when a patient, just like today with the opiates, they're getting their prescription of pills, what they do in the privacy of their own home and whether they choose to give it out, we really can't control it. What's happening is that when that patient does get caught somehow, or they give a product out and maybe there's something that happens where there was an investigation or some type of criminal activity, that patient is responsible, but it's nothing that we can do to control it.
I know right now,
there's an allowance of how much a patient could get a month.
that's what I was just going to ask that.
So there's a way to govern how much. So you can only go to one dispensary. You can't just show up at any dispensary you want. If you want to change, there's a formal process, submitting documentation to the state, and you can only change 4 times a year. But because it's the pharmacy registry system, it's 2.5 ounces a month of product. And depending on the different forms, there's different measures of the equivalency of that product.
Now, I know, for example, if I get Tylenol with codeine, They tell me, they give me a small quantity, I can't come back for, whatever the 30 days or whatever the fulfillment is, and it's very, very strict. Is that the same type of controls that are in place?
Same way. So the control would be is how you had just mentioned codeine. We would say marijuana, and it's 2.5 ounces a month. So for every 30 days, you could receive 2.5 ounces of product. But if you were to, let's say, show up at the dispensary and you've already exceeded your allotment, the system just won't allow you to be prescribed product.
My last question, Nelson, and I will turn it over. We've got the pleasure of having two officers here with us today. I want to ask, how do you interface with the police department? What are the controls that they would feel comfortable with if we were to proceed with this?
Sure. So our relations right now that we have with our other dispensaries, we've learned from, and typically what's happening is that we're welcoming you into our dispensaries. Where we have you meet with the planning and zoning there, the towns that are active, so you can get a good familiarity of how it's already happening and how it's working.
To be fair, just
Please use the microphone.
I'm sorry.
yeah. It's
So what's happening right now is the active dispensaries, and one in particular that we have good relationship with, they have a great relationship with the local enforcement. They welcome the enforcement into the dispensary. There's an active presence always at the dispensary as far as come here, we have no problem. Sometimes the police officers actually get put on a list and they'll hang out there if they want, just to kind of, it helped the police officers in a specific town understand by seeing the type of patients that are coming in. And it helped the enforcement understand that these patients need medicine. Of course, there's going to be a majority that abuse it. And when that happens, we like to have a good relationship with the enforcement. It's not something that we're looking to put product out in the street. When we hear of an incident or a criminal activity, and there has been some, usually the enforcement will call the dispensary and let us know, hey, we have a patient here that's assigned from your dispensary and there's a problem. And then usually the dispensary will meet with the department and figure out if this was an anomaly or if this is something that we need to develop a better program or measures so that we could not allow this to keep happening. We haven't really had, from what we've heard in our, in dispensary that we have interest in, really any problems. We've seen from out west, because we have some consultants out west that have helped us, that the criminal activity does go down. That's why there's some towns here who have lifted the moratoriums and they actually want medical marijuana in their district of, let's say, a lower income or poverty level because they know that it will help. They've seen criminal activity become alleviated. It's actually gotten some drugs off the street as well. So it's statistical research that has come from out west already. And out here, this isn't a new program. This is in its 5th year. We're starting to get our own statistics here. There is enough research. We could bring in other police districts and planning and zonings, and anyone here is welcome to go on a tour of a dispensary if you'd like, or to meet. We could bring in officials from other planning and zoning because we have those relationships that can meet with you as far as, yes, when this was coming into our town, we had the same questions and concerns. From that time, this is what happened, this is what we've learned, and this is how it exists in our town today. We could do that for you guys, no problem. But if you have any questions about, I can answer them for you, or if there's a way that, a suggestion of how we could develop a better relationship. We're open to it.
Okay, we'll have, if you want, folks want to speak, you can do that offline because I want to give as many commissioners a chance to ask questions while we have this session. So, Mr. Augustus, you're next, and you have about 10 minutes left in the session.
Okay, I just have one quick question. I'm not sure if you'll have the answer or not, but of the people that come in to apply for the medical marijuana, what percentage do you accept into the program?
It's hard to say. So we don't interfere with the physicians or APRNs. That's their business, that's their licenses, that's their liability, it's their discretion. It's really hard to say, put it this way, when a patient's coming in and a patient has Parkinson's, they have Parkinson's. It's not really, you're not really going to deny them. Like most of the other ailments, the question that I think if we're going to get specific is how many percentage of PTSD patients do you deny? Because PTSD is the only ailment that you can't stick your arm out. and you can't get tested. Your blood doesn't show if you've experienced a traumatic event. So that's the percentage that it's truly up in the air. It's a doctor's discretion. And we don't interfere with them. We ask for as much supporting evidence and documentation that we can as far as if someone was incarcerated. Someone can't just come in and say, yes, I was incarcerated and I have PTSD now because of a lot of the events that I experienced. We're asking for court documents. We're asking for inmate cards. We're asking for supporting evidence to at least justify that, okay, this event existed. The physicians and APRNs can't judge as far as to say, well, I don't know if you really are anxious, or I don't know if you really have trouble sleeping. If someone is a veteran and coming off tours, it's hard to say, I don't know if I'm believing your story. So PTSD is the one that there's a percentage that pass and percentage that don't. We didn't pass the doctor today, didn't pass some patients because they didn't come in with supporting evidence. But what we do is fair, meaning for your evaluation, you're paying up front before you see the doctor because you're paying for that service. If our doctor does deny you, we're still providing you 30 days to provide some information. Come back. Even if, let's just say you come in and you're saying, I have glaucoma. Well, I don't have my records with me, but I have it. We'll give you 30 days. Come back. Come back with your medical records. It'll be free of charge. We'll see you again, and we'll administer you into the program if it's current and you have the condition.
Thank you.
Mr. Dexy?
No questions.
Mr. Emasani? Mr. Fuller?
First, just a point of clarification. I believe in the current draft regulations, we have it as a freestanding building as the preferred structure for medical marijuana. I also know it was in previous draft regulations. A reason for that was mostly because of security reasons, traffic reasons, a lot of what you referenced. I have a couple of questions. Being a professional, seeing it firsthand, seeing who comes in and out of the facilities, what have you noticed of foot traffic in and out of a facility? Is there anything you could compare it to, like a light sort of use, like another pharmacy, or greater or less than that?
I would say on an average you're seeing 20 patients a day. And my opinion, what a good and organized dispensary, how it operates, is you're doing appointment only.
Okay, so no walk-ins per se.
No, there are dispensaries that do walk-ins. We typically don't like those dispensaries only because we've gotten some of the feedback from the state as far as you don't want to provide an environment where you have a lion at your door. But let's think about patients first. We're thinking about the patient that's in pain. We wouldn't want a patient standing outside or standing in line, or a patient who has severe PTSD, who has anxiety, who really doesn't want to be waiting, which exists. So we try to make it very efficient, appointment only, and it's a smooth process.
And then my other question, when there is an incident where law enforcement is involved because someone's using the product in a not prescribed by prescription, using it in some sort of illegal way, or they're under the influence and committed some act, how does that get reported? I know the local police department reaches out to your facility and you try to work with them. Is there any sort of reporting system that goes up to DCP or state authorities?
Not right now. What I can tell you is that the agency is growing and developing. If you look at alcohol, there was an agency that had to start here in Connecticut to help regulate and create the processes as far as where the liquor stores can go, what are the prices of the product. Just because we're in our 4th or 5th year, these agencies are starting to become developed now that will help with some of these processes. But right now, local enforcement would deal with it as far as the criminal activity that happened. If they're under the influence, they're under the influence, and they're going to get in trouble as they should.
And I have 2 more questions. Probably what would be controversial if Stratford were to adopt these regulations is how it touches residential zones and areas nearest schools and churches and sensitive places. We have something called special case in our zoning regulations that takes into consideration neighborhood considerations for bars, tobacco, restaurants, things that you may not want around
Sure.
those sorts of areas. So, in your experience, have you noticed, because I know there was 2 facilities in Milford. One of them really drew a lot of criticism on River Street. I believe that was
Right.
the one in the residential neighborhood. And the other one being on the Post Road, originally drawing up some controversy. So in your experience, do you think it's better to have it in more commercial and industrial areas away from sensitive residential neighborhoods?
I do, only because you want to be welcomed. If it's one resident that's unhappy, that resident's been here a very long time. If there's a way to put it in an area where there's less obstruction, opposition, then why not? Retail, it works. Industrial, it works as well. But your only opposition is going to come from residents. Where before we'd go out there and canvass, we'd try to get a feeling of, is there going to be a problem in this area? I haven't done any surveying myself, but what happens is there may only be a few really great buildings or locations.
Yeah.
And if there is, and it happens to be in a residential area, even if it's outside the variance of the 1,500 feet, we would still want to do our due diligence around that area. But there's only so many good locations that are probably available here in town.
And then my final 2 questions. Would there be any regulations you would suggest that are overly burdensome or not regulatory enough? Like from Milford's experience, are there any things that Stratford should take under consideration?
I wouldn't look at Milford as far as something that Milford, but just let's say in general.
Yeah.
You're going to just want to, I guess, be prepared for an area to have some visitors from outside surrounding towns coming in. If you have some folks from Fairfield or Westport coming into Stratford, it'll happen. It could be a benefit. But there's really nothing detrimental that's happened. We would be hearing about it. If there was, we'd be hearing about it in the news. There'd be a lot of complaints. The program has been widely successful. Every month it's growing. There's not much opposition.
Okay, my final question, just in your experience as a medical professional in this
Sure.
capacity, have you noticed if, because of the legalization and liberalization of medical marijuana, in your experience, do you think it's gotten some people off of either morphine or oxycodone or some of the more dangerous? Tiger Woods, for example, is probably the notorious case right now.
It's all our patients. Yeah. And what's humbling is the patients that are sitting in front of the Board of Physicians saying, please pass my condition, the physicians, their response is, we know that we're giving you the opiates. We don't have anything else. We don't. All we have is this pill, or this one. We'd love to give you something else, but we don't. But that's why they'll pass the condition, because it's a way that now they have alternative access. It's an alternative method. So yeah, our patients that we're seeing every day, they're coming off the opiates. That's the main thing. They're tired of taking the pain pills.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time. And
Oh, you're welcome. No, thank you.
the commission.
We have 2 members who have not had a chance to speak yet. I'll ask Mr. Proto, I'm assuming you're representing the petitioner. Mr. Proto, would you mind if we just took a couple minutes to allow the last 2 commissioners to ask some questions? We'll do as much. Thank you. I appreciate your understanding. Ms. Patuski.
I'll try to make this quick. What kind of security or accountability do you have around the delivery process and the inventory?
So that is one of the largest parts of our, let's say, dispensary. So the inventory process is one starting with the state registration as far as how we get our product. So the product is coming from the grow because it's already sealed and managed and tracked. It's all scanned, and right when it's scanned, it's put into the registry system. Every patient that we administer medicine to, it's coming off of their ticker because 1, it's coming off of their allotment, but then 2, it's the control of what's being sold. The state of Connecticut right now has started to audit all the dispensaries, and what the audit is, it's showing us what you sold, how much you sold it for, the patients that you sold it to, and they're starting to become a process now of managing and monitoring all the product. The security, 1, the building has to be state-of-the-art, the best security, whether it's steel enforcement and all the walls and the best surveillance and security all around, depending on how you're getting your product. And that's why I mentioned to Ms. Phillips that in a standalone building, we like the Sally Port, just because there's some dispensaries that are really getting the product right through the front door. Someone coming in and bringing it in their boxes, and we don't feel that that is secure, especially when there's patients that you're in the waiting room. So we have private access, and that's how we had our architect kind of scope our last building. Sally Port doors come up. We have our armed guards. The truck comes in. Sally Port goes down. Product then is managed and inventoried, and then everybody goes out. But security is the largest part.
Mr. Figliotti?
Hi. How long would you say your product would stay in the facility before it was all dispensed?
Well, there's expiration dates on all the products. So there's a whole process on if you have expired product, what you can do with it. But right now, we're out of product. The patient demand is so high that we're continuously getting deliveries 2 to 3 times a week from each grow. The growers right now want more patients. They have enough product. They need patient demand to go up. But the dispensaries, it's a cash-only business. They're getting as much as they can. But if we'll go back to the site. If you get a small dispensary and you have a 1,500 square foot store, not much place to put a lot of product. As opposed to a bank where you have a large vault, you could store a lot of product. The reason why it's important for a dispensary to store a lot of product is for, again, patients. If you're a patient who has chronic pain and you find a particular product that helps alleviate your pain and you just figured out the correct dosage, method, time of day, you are reliable on that product being consistent. You don't want to come back to your dispensary and ask for that particular strain of medicine and it's out. Or it's changed because the grower's inconsistent. So a good dispensary is able to keep enough inventory and product so that their patients always have access to their medicine. Because that's what this truly is. It's patients that have found a particular medicine that helps. And they're coming in wanting that. They're not wanting to get high. They're saying, I need my pills. I need that pill every day. And then if the dispensary says, oh, well, we didn't have enough, or the grower sold out, that's a problem. So the growers are trying to keep up right now. Dispensaries are keeping up in the state of Connecticut, and that's why we're doing relief. We're trying to help the patients right now, the demand go up. The more awareness we can create, the more education, it helps everyone.
How many appointments would you need in a month to get your 2.5 ounce allotment?
Here's what's interesting. We see the patients from Fairfield County, they buy as much as they can because they have to drive the furthest. Patients that are living a few miles from their dispensary, they're coming once a week because one, it's cash, so they're not spending their whole paycheck. But when you have to drive far, they're buying a lot. You could buy it all at once if you wanted to.
So nobody prescribes the amount that they get at regular intervals. So if they can afford the 2.5 ounces, they would buy it. Who regulates the price?
No one.
Wow.
There's no and that's where I was speaking to the gentleman here. There's agencies that are starting to become in a place that are going to start saying, well, maybe we should regulate it like liquor.
So the growers
sell it to the dispensary. Dispensary could choose what they sell it for. Because there's, let's say, a competitive marketplace right now, you have some dispensaries that it's a little bit more expensive. They know that people are driving far. They don't have another choice. You have another dispensary that is in an inner city. They're just trying to sell product quickly. They have a cheaper product, larger menu. But if you're a dispensary and let's say, think of it like you have a big Walgreens and Rite Aids, or if in some of your communities, here in Stratford, there's a private drugstore. Right near the bakery here, there's a small private pharmacy right over here. That's a pharmacy where they probably know their patients. It probably stays around the same, and he doesn't need to get a lot of products because he knows pretty much his flow. Some dispensaries operate that way. They know exactly their patients, that 2,500 to 3,000 patients right now, typically what they're buying, what they're spending on average, and they're pretty much catering to their population. Where another dispensary will have a ton of products, prices all over, and so but there is no regulation right now.
So what's the incentive to, if you have to use marijuana or if you know you get relief from using it, what would be the incentive to buy it from a dispensary? I guess because it's, as opposed to getting it, I mean, could they get it cheaper somewhere else? But what would be the incentive to buy it from the dispensary?
Okay, a couple reasons, and let's keep in the forefront patient. You're a patient. So one, the pricing, it's cheaper than the street right now, and the product is made by scientists. It's the best quality, and it's triple tested for all the pesticides and molds and contaminants. So one, you know you're getting a clean product. But once you start to understand marijuana, you understand that there's different varieties. There's indicas that are more for sleep and anxiety, depression and pain. Or there's sativas that you're able to use during the day, and it's more, it lets your endorphins out and makes you alert and aware. On the street, you don't know what you're getting. And if you're a patient, you want consistency. You want to know what you're getting, and so it's a coin toss every time you're getting something in the street, and that's what we hear from patients. One, it's got to the point now where the price is better than the street, and that's why I'm saying that in some of those inner city and lower developed areas, the drug dealing, the drugs, it kind of gets alleviated. I think so. This product is better and it's cheaper. There's no more of selling marijuana on the streets and it just, you don't need to. And that's where the patients are saying, please don't make me go out to the street. We just want to get it the right way. We want to, and we know it's not expensive. It's only expensive because it's cash.
Okay, I think we actually have to cut it right there. We've gone for the full hour, and I do apologize, Mr. Vigliotti. You just happened to get the last one. But I think what we'll do, Chairman Phillips, and what Mr. Patuski, Mr. Habansky. Yeah, I'm a senator from Jablonski's. We're okay. I think we'll set up another time that we can continue this. I don't know. We have a public hearing followed by a planning meeting. I don't know if there's really an appetite for us to reconvene afterwards, but I think what we'll do is...
You guys okay? Do you need to come back afterwards?
I can't come back today, but I mean,
Yeah.
I do have a couple more questions, but...
All right, I think we'll set up a different time.
Just set up another time.
Okay, thank you. So I want to thank you very much for joining us. I want to thank the members, your guests also who came, and I want to thank all the commissioners who asked some very good questions. This was a very good session, and for those members that didn't make it, we'll encourage them to watch the video because I think this has been a very educational time. So I thank you very much, and on that note, I think I'll take a motion to adjourn this particular meeting. Mr. Vigliotti, second, Mrs. Pepin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. We're adjourned at 7:11 p.m. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Planning commissioners, just take a minute and get yourselves resituated, and we'll go right into the public hearing.
Because there aren't any committees yet. Commissions. Hey, hi, Carol. So right now, there is a,
Open market?
yeah.
Somebody come over there? She's sitting there tonight.
Oh, are you in for Charlie? No? Oh, okay.
We have signed seats.
No, really. I'm Pat Tussle.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I don't think you were here last week.
I don't think so. You probably heard something for me.
Maybe, oh, there you go.
Heard about it.
Are you sure?
As in, no, but it exists somewhere.
No, it's the road. They're asking for sidewalks.
No.
It's been a while. I had to remember.
Yeah,
They should be 8 feet wide.
the recommendation is that the sidewalk has to be put in.
Right, because as part of the,
It has been.
part of the green.
Yeah.
That's what's there.
Yeah,
Listen,
absolutely. No, there should be public.
Went over most of it yesterday.
Thank you.
The interesting part is this main one that we're going to be discussing. I sat in on 2003.
This is something that came after our mailer already went out.
I considered that.
Okay, commissioners, planning commissioners, that is, will take their seats. We'll begin the public hearing. If you're not staying for it, I'd ask you to please take your discussions outside. Commissioner Phillips?
Stephanie, get out of the room.
I wasn't going to say that. Okay, I'll call to order the meeting of the Planning Commission or the public hearing of the Planning Commission at 7:15 p.m. There is one item on the agenda, which I'll just read. 60 Beach Drive, petition of Beach Bound Properties, LLC, seeking approval of a 3-lot subdivision entitled Subdivision Map, Lordship Manor in an RS4 zone. A coastal site plan review of this petition is required in accordance with the Coastal Management Act. Let's see here. Noted for the record that Ms. Tremasani, alternate member of the Planning Commission, is sitting in place of Mr. Senft, regular member. The chair reserves the right to rule on cross-examination for the purpose of clarification of technical questions. The for the record petitions to be heard this evening were advertised in the Connecticut Post on June 7th and June 14th. Properties were duly posted on June 13th. Mr. Proto, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Cabral. My name is Benjamin Proto. I'm an attorney with an office here in Stratford. I represent the applicant, Beachbound Properties. With me this evening is John Paul Garcia, our civil engineer on the project, and Stephen Goldblum, a member of Beachbound Properties, LLC. I've provided Mr. Vesey with a copy of our certificates of mailing and letters that went out to our 4 abutting property owners. In addition, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd like to hand out, you may have this, Mr. Yancey may have given this to you, you probably have, but this is a letter of December 6th, 2002 to Stephen Crawley of Commercial Real Estate Equity Management. This was an approval letter for a 3-lot subdivision at the same location that was approved in 2002.
I hate to tell you this, but I acted on this. I acted on this.
We won't hold that against you, Mr. Vesey. Mr. Vesey just informed me that he was a member of the Planning Commission in 2002 when that application was acted upon.
Wow.
At that time, Mr. Chairman, the commission approved a 3-lot subdivision at the property at the corner of Washington Boulevard and Beach Drive. For those of you who can remember far back, Allen's East property, across the street from Marnix, next to what is now the Krabby Dog restaurant, directly across the street from the seawall. The property today is vacant and empty. There is no building on it. The property is about 28,000 square feet in total size. We're proposing today to make 3
building lots in an RS4 zone, and those lots would range in size from just under 8,700 square feet to just over 10,000 square feet. It would be 3 single-family residential units. I believe in your packet you have architectural drawings of proposed units, which are slightly over 2,000 square feet with 2-car garages, on slab, no basement. In addition, you have before you a CAM application and a soil and erosion control application. The CAM application, as you're aware, has been forwarded to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for their review. I'm sure Mr. Fabianski has provided you with notification from DEEP. It's indicating that they had no issues with the CAM application. We've received no issues in regards to our soil and erosion control application. About a month or so ago, we met with various agencies of the town, including planning and zoning, health, inland wetlands, building, engineering. I don't know if police were with us at that one. Police were not with us at that one. We had a very good conversation. There were a number of suggestions made to improve the application from all of the agencies, and we've incorporated all of those suggestions into our application. You have with you this evening, comments from some various departments, most notably from the engineering and building department, and Mr. Casey in particular. I believe you have an email that I believe Mr. Fabianski has probably given you, which sets out 11 items. I'd like you to be aware that some of those items are addressed in the application. For instance, he indicates the need for a soil and erosion control plan. You have that in your plans as page C4. And then there's some other things such as the monuments for surveying purposes and location purposes. If they're not there, we're going to put them in. Everything that Mr. Casey has indicated in his email, we either have already done or we will be doing. And most of that shows on the plans. One of the things to note that currently the property is about 85% impervious, which, this being this close to the water, could be problematic. This project will take that 85 impervious material down to about 45% impervious, substantially opening more to pervious materials, grass, soil, which will provide for better flood control, better drainage than what is there. The units will tie into the existing sanitary and storm. We're going to have to extend the sanitary and storm from where it is now down to where the driveway entrance is. The plans currently show for the 3 lots to share a common driveway with branches off of the common driveway. There will be a sewer main that will run up the driveway, and the 3 units will attach into the sewer main. The utilities will run underground under the driveway, and all 3 units will connect to the utilities through branches off of that as well. So everything will be underground as is required. The sewers will be extended. Mr. Casey has asked us to move some manholes and to provide for some additional sewer movement, all of which we're going to do. Mr. Casey has asked that we currently are proposing sidewalks on Washington Boulevard. There are no sidewalks on Beach at the moment. We have indicated our willingness to put sidewalks in. Mr. Casey has asked that we do that with an impervious material. We are happy to do that. I'm sorry, a pervious material. And we're happy to do that, and we will use whatever material the town wants. And there are some different materials that are available, some which may be better, some which may be worse, that close to the waterfront. We met with the Harbor Management Commission last week. I believe you have a letter from them indicating that there's no impact to the waterfront or under the Harbor Management Plan. They have asked for one thing in particular, which we all thought was interesting. Their recommendation for tree plantings were that we do palm trees. I kid you not. We at first thought they were joking. They were not. They actually thought palm trees would be a good idea down there. They subsequently decided that might not be such a good idea. And you also have a letter from our conservation officer, Christina Beethoven, who we've spent time with, and she has made some recommendations. We originally met with her, and she and Mr. Garcia were going to spend time together discussing types of tree plantings. She has indicated in her letter that she thinks trees might not be the best way to go because of the salt environment, but rather some shrubberies and bushes which are more conducive to a better saltwater environment. Again, we are happy to provide whatever plantings the commission and the town thinks best serve that. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, one other issue, as you can see from Mr. Hibansky's comments, the plan of conservation and development shows that the future use of this particular parcel should be commercial. And while that may be what the plan calls for, the current zoning is RS4, and as such, we can only do on that property today residential development. We can't do commercial. The zone has never been changed. We also think that a residential use on this property is a better use of the property. It's a higher and better use, not only for the property and for the people in the neighborhood, but also for the town from a grand list perspective. It's our anticipation that these units would probably sell somewhere in the $500,000 to $700,000 range, being right on the water. And as such, we think we would see a better grand list build than we would for a smaller restaurant or a bait and tackle shop, which some people have suggested would go down there well. So, but today, even though the plan calls for this property to be a commercial development, unless there's a zone change, that can't occur today. It could only be a residential and an RS4, which, as you well know, requires at least 7,500 square feet of lot, which we currently have. We believe we meet all the subdivision regulations. There are no variances that will be needed. This is in a flood zone, obviously. It's in a FEMA flood zone. The flood zone line actually appears just about on the sidewalk area at Beach Drive. It goes from a VE to a V zone, to an A zone. It goes from 15 to 11. So we're above that. And so Mr. Garcia could answer some additional questions on that, but in order to meet the FEMA flood zone requirement, we're going to have to raise the grade of the property. It's not our intention to stilt the houses. A very small amount, probably about 1.5 to 2 feet, will be above the ground, above the grade, but it's our intention to change the grade to meet the flood zone. If you go back and look at the 2002 file, one of the things you'll see is the proposal was to do retaining walls along what would be now the Crabby Dog side of the property. Deep rejected that plan. They did not want that. They wanted the grade raise. We have not proposed retaining walls in that way. We do think we're going to need some retainage.
I think one of the comments from Mr. Casey was technically you can't grade in the VE zone. For the record, John Paul Garcia. One of Mr. Casey's comments is technically you can't grade in a VE zone. And we show a very slight amount of grading along the street. We can pull that back so we don't require a retaining wall or additional grading, because one of the things that DEEP wanted in 2002 was no retaining walls. They don't want that kind of a barrier where you have a VE zone or adjacent to a VE zone. So that's relatively simple to do.
And with the grading and the substantial increase in pervious area, it will substantially help in those days when we have water coming over the seawall, or as we move into some of our busier storm times. That property will drain much better. That area will drain much better. and the extension of the sewer lines and the storm system will provide a benefit. Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure there's anything else I can tell you about the project. I think we'd be better off answering any questions any of the commissioners may have about the project.
Certainly. Questions from members? Ms. Patesky?
Okay. Because the plan of development calls for a commercial area down there, would you consider making one of those buildings a commercial building as opposed to all residential?
We can't because of the zone.
If the zone was changed?
If the zone were changed, we still think the better use of the property is for residential. But as I indicated, unless and until the zone is changed, it's a moot question simply because we would require a variance, which I don't think we would be granted in a variance from an RS to a commercial zone. And we still think that the residential use for the 3 lots that we're proposing is the better and higher use than making one small 12 to 1,500 square foot commercial building.
Mr. Vexi?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
Back in 2002, 2003, I was on the Planning Commission that originally approved this particular plan with the 3 buildings on it, and I have not changed my mind on it.
Okay.
Can I ask a question then of Mr. Vexi?
Mm-hmm.
Were you on the committee or commission when the plan of conservation and development was, developed?
Yes, I was.
So why did you vote against it being part of a commercial?
I had disagreements on various different parts of it, yes. I would think anybody else would. The case in point is at this location, I feel that those 3 structures would be better than any commercial placement there.
Do you remember why they wanted that to be a commercial area?
Because it had been a commercial area previous to that. There was still another restaurant further down the street. Okay, and they thought it might be better to include another restaurant or try to get the first one back. However, it was not successful, and the restaurant in that particular area have not been successful.
But the plan of development was in 2013.
Yes.
So 4 years ago. I don't know, have we had any other commercial interest in the area?
There had been a number of commercial interests up until about 5 years ago. They did not pan out.
If I may, to the best of my knowledge, and this is just from being in the market and doing different projects, the property has been for sale or been available for sale for some time. To the best of my knowledge, the owners have not received any serious offers for commercial or, quite frankly, residential, and as not uncommon, there's always someone who's looking to steal the piece, and if I can get it really cheap, I can do something there. But I think it's also important to note the neighborhood. Washington Boulevard, other than Marnix, is entirely residential, including the new condominium development that's going at the roller rink. First Avenue is entirely residential. Beach Drive, other than what is now the Krabby Dog, is entirely residential. So it's a predominantly, and when I say predominantly, majorly predominantly residential neighborhood. And we think, again, this fits into the character of the neighborhood in a much better way.
Well, I wasn't on the plan of conservation and development, but I could also understand the concept of cluster marketing and having 2, 3, 4 of the same type of place, and you market it as a destination. So that may have been one of the rationales for, asking this to be a commercial property.
I don't disagree with that analysis, but I think the other side of that is, as we well know, the market will ultimately tell you what it's going to do or not going to do.
But also, there may have been a rationale, and again, I wasn't on the Plan of Conservation Development team, that we have, as you say, a lot of residential right near our coastline, which keeps it from being for the public. Whereas a commercial property, depending on the commercial property, would allow it to be for the public as opposed to three families. The other question I have, though, is how does the Greenway plans impact or go together in that plan that you've shown us? Because I understand the Greenway is supposed to go along Beach Drive, and I'm sure Mr. Watson knows the Greenway plan better than I.
If I may comment, the Greenway runs across, on, is it Shore Drive?
No. Yeah.
Beach Drive and goes up Washington.
Right.
So essentially, because Beach Drive is one way there, it would have to be, you'd have to have the traffic off this way because of parking. There's no way they can move that parking back in that area. So it's going to have to come across the edge of that property.
Yeah, and that's what the continuation of the sidewalk was here, as opposed to here, because then it goes across.
But you essentially are, you're pushing all, if you use that sidewalk with a bike, you're pushing it right out into the most dangerous part. So you really need to have, those sidewalks go all the way.
We can continue this across. We had a discussion with the town that wasn't raised as an issue. In fact, just the opposite. But we can put a sidewalk here. It's not a big deal.
How about an 8-foot sidewalk?
Pardon?
How about an 8-foot sidewalk?
We can talk to the planner, see if that's something that...
That's the Greenway should be 8 to 10 feet.
I understand that, but you've only got so much room to work with. We can probably do that if, if it's what the town...
We could give you 2. We could give you 2 feet of the. You could get 2 feet of roadway. You could take 2 feet and give 6 feet and make up 8 feet.
The only thing you want to be careful of with 8-foot wide sidewalks is you start to encroach upon snow shelves.
That's a separate subject.
Well, but in dealing
We've had a Greenway there on the books for 20 years.
It's not a big deal. We'll sit down with the P&Z administrator and with the engineer, and we'll come up with, because one of the questions he had was he wanted to have a permeable sidewalk. So we'll see what he wants for materials, and we'll incorporate it as part of the plan. Not a big deal. And we'll make it as wide as you want within certain parameters.
Mr. Vexley, did you have a follow-up?
Yes. Coming back to the factor of commercial as opposed to residential in this particular area, the plan of development at the time looked at the particular things and had not made a finite decision for this property. It is a RS4, if I remember correctly, and has remained such, and no action has been taken against it. It at that time made good sense to turn it into residential, considering the factor of being residential all the way down Washington Avenue and across in there. And recently, you've had the last restaurant in there change hands. Okay, so I have a feeling that a restaurant is not exactly the best place there without having other associated elements to bring people to this place. And it's shown by that because this particular property has laid dormant since 2003,
Since the fire, since the Allen's East fire, which was in the early 2000s, as I don't remember the year,
right.
but the early 2000s was when the building was destroyed.
That was a very nice restaurant, which I used to frequent often. My comments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Watson.
Sorry. The other thing is we've been working on our coastal resiliency plan, and the property just to the west of there, you get into really dangerous property. Not down closer to the shore, but one of the plans that we had outlined to us was the fact that eventually, sometime in the future, we're going to end up with an additional 2 to 3 foot addition to the top of the seawall that runs across there. that that area is in fragile shape so that the 11-foot that we're talking about is going to become much more treacherous. So I see that you're putting your houses at 14 feet. I don't know that that's, I mean, Jay might disagree, but given that that area down there, the further you go out to the edge of the property, is essentially a sandbar, and the houses that go behind Marnix are probably going to wash away in one of the coming storms, which means that whole area is going to be susceptible for overflooding from that direction back over into these lands. I hope that you're taking into account the latest FEMA projections.
Yes, they're brand new. Yes, that's, and FEMA's at 11, we're 14. We're approximately 3 feet above the FEMA minimum. The FEMA minimum, base flood elevation.
Okay.
It's been that way for exactly your reason. Don't get me wrong. I understand, and I do a lot of these, and you do have to have some wiggle room. You can't do it if it's 11. You don't build a house at 11.5. I think that's poor planning.
Right.
I agree with you.
And the other question is, we're looking at sewers these days. We're looking at a lot of hardening our sewers so that we don't get exploding sewers. Did you get instructions for that where you are? Because
One of Mr. Casey's comments is to change one of the manholes.
okay,
The manhole covers to a hardened cover. Yeah, no, we
Okay.
that was one of his comments.
okay. Good. Thank you.
Just two brief ones. The grayish, because you have the colored version as opposed to mine. That gray area between the, like that. Yes, that one right there. What is that? That's a side. It's a driveway. Okay. Okay, and it goes off of Washington Parkway, and then does it dead end at the other side? I don't want to. Okay, so it's not a cut through. Okay, just want to make sure. And yeah, okay. And there's not going to be any change to the public access to the waterfront, obviously, correct? Okay, yeah, okay. Other members have questions? Okay. I think you're good to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody wish to speak in favor? Does anybody wish to speak in opposition to the petition? Anyone in opposition? If not, we'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Vexi, is there a second? Ms. Patuski, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. We'll go right into our administrative session. As soon as I can find my agenda. It's, yeah, sorry. No, it's recess at 7:40, or adjourned at 7:40, and reconvene at 7:40. I can find my agenda. Just give me 1 second here. There we go. Okay, so we'll call, like I said, to 7:40. We're back in on our administrative session, 60 Beach Drive. I guess officially we have to take it off the table. Mr. Vexi, is there a second? Mr. Vigliotti, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, it's open for discussion unanimously. Discussion, members. Although we had a lot to begin with, but
You or me? Okay. I feel we've heard enough on this to make a motion to recommend the three-part subdivision of this property, subject to the comments of the engineering department.
Mhm.
And who was the other one?
Conservation.
Conservation.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Vexi to approve it in accordance with adherence to the comments by the Conservation Department and the Engineering Department. Is there a second? Anybody want to second that?
Just for clarification's sake,
Sure.
that would include Jay's conclusions? I mean, that's basically the same thing you concluded in your...
I will accept that.
Okay. I'll take that. So you second, Mr. Vigliotti?
I'll second it. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Further discussion or any conditions? There's no waivers on this one, right?
No.
Is that written? Okay, so no waivers of the sidewalk or the utilities?
Correct.
Okay.
I would just, well, I'm going to be voting against it anyway, but simply because I think if you do a plan of development and spend all that kind of time, that's what you should try and follow. And this is not in keeping, as Jay says, Mr. Hibansky, in keeping with the plan of development. I also was here in 2003, and I didn't agree with that decision at that time to make it houses, because I feel we do not have enough open space along the water for the people of Stratford. And I believe that we should not be turning anything over to a private group of basically 3 people to enjoy the water, and taking it out of the possibility of allowing hundreds of people to enjoy it at a restaurant or some kind of a commercial development. And I think that's why the plan of development said it should be a commercial site. Again, I wasn't on the, but I would agree with that rationale. I also know that when Allen's East was there, the area had 3 restaurants, all of which were pretty successful, especially during the summer, and especially with their outside seating. So I think we, by doing this, are limiting the access to the waterfront by our townspeople, and we're taking away what would be almost like a nice restaurant row, and we're losing that possibility. And I think as trying to look forward and planning for the town, in my opinion, it would be better served as something in a commercial venture that lends to accessibility for the greater good of Stratford, and not 3 families.
Mr. Vexy?
It's obvious that I disagree with you, considering
You've been nice,
looking
guys.
back on the history and seeing what was done and what had happened at that particular area. If you took over that particular area, what would you turn it into, a park? It's in the heart of a commercial district. Your parking is a problem at the present time. I do not see any reason why the suggestion was made for the plan of development, but at the same time, no action was taken to change this from an RS4 district to a commercial district. And I don't know how it stayed an RS4 district and still had 2 restaurants on it. Okay? I believe it's in the best interest of the town to maintain it, subdivide it, put in buildings into it, and gain the taxes and the other investment opportunities that are there, particularly on the point on the end of Washington Avenue, where there is nothing, and if you put in some other commercial building, remember, a commercial building could be manufacturing also. All right? That's my position. Thank you.
I have a question. If this was approved in 2003, what happened?
Wasn't acted on.
Did it
For a reason, I
The
assume.
approval expired? Is that?
Maybe they didn't have the money. Maybe they realized it really wasn't the right type of development. So there's no guarantee that this will happen, and there's no guarantee for commercial. But the other point I want to make is that we haven't changed any of our zoning regulations to match the plan of development. We have asked several months ago to get the funding to make those changes. We have not received that funding, and that's in limbo. So to say, well, we haven't changed it already, we haven't changed it because we haven't had the money and the opportunity to do that. We lost our town planner, who probably would have been the individual to put this all together, all the changes based on the plan of development. And Jay really doesn't have the time, Mr. Hibansky doesn't have the time to make those changes. So it's a kind of a catch-22. We have a plan of development. The rationale for allowing this to happen is because we haven't updated our zoning regulations. We haven't updated our zoning regulations because we don't have a town planner, we don't have the money to do that job. So to me, that really isn't a legitimate point. But, I don't want to, I obviously am in the minority in here, but I also would suggest that somebody who is in the majority make sure that one of the stipulations is that the Greenway plan be considered and incorporated into any building or plan that's put together.
Okay,
Along with the coastal resiliency plan. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Right at the present.
Let me just jump in here for a second, because I just want to offer a couple thoughts here, and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Vexi. I was on the board when we were debating the plan of conservation and development, and considering the breadth of material that we were trying to cover, I don't know that we ever got down to the specifics of that particular lot in that area. And having been on, you have to change the tape? Oh. Okay, that's videotaping. Considering the number of applications that we held for Marnix, because Marnix, when I was on zoning, we had to go through, they did some changes there. They added outdoor seating. They did a change to actually get a liquor permit and so on. And every time that we had the discussion with Marnix, it was always dealing with the issues that they were sort of grandfathered in, that they existed prior to the zoning. So they were a non-conforming use, I believe it was at that point. I'm not sure if that's correct terminology of that, but I think that's what it was. I think it was a non-conforming. And then the area also had parking issues as well. And you go down there on a nice summer, if you went down there right now, you'd probably see that you have quite a bit of parking. They had also been, besides Allen's, and I'm not sure if the French restaurant that was down there, Plouffe, I'm not sure if that was the same building. I can't remember some of the history there. No, it's not. It's the other one. But there had been some that had come and that had been vacant for some time. So, and then the roller rink as a commercial entity had been abandoned for quite some time, and there had been no movement on that until it became residential. So there's been a very much of an ebb and flow of what people envisioned for that area. And now you're seeing that it seems like it's shifted again over toward the residential side with what's going on at the roller rink. I appreciate your concerns, and certainly when I've had guests to Stratford, one place that we always go is Marnix, just because it's such a great place for them to enjoy the water and to enjoy the scenery there. So those are issues, but I don't think it was something that I don't recall us getting down to that level on the plan of conservation and development to that particular area there, and that we probably should have, but this is where we are right now. And but I do take your concerns about the Greenway to heart. I'll ask those that made the motion if they want to include that in there. I think that would be an appropriate thing to do. So that's just my comments on it. Mr. Vexi?
I was just pointing out, right at the present time, we have an application before us on a piece of property which is an RS4 district. We should take the action on the RS4 district.
Mm-hmm.
It allows the factor of the subdivision of it and the use thereof.
Right, and we have not done a wholesale rezoning of the town, I would also add, and also, just so members are aware, I'm surprised it hasn't been brought up, there's limited authority that you have when you're dealing with subdivisions and what you can approve or deny, so just be aware of that as well. There are some rules on that. Do you want to add the item on the Greenway to your motion, sir?
I was holding the Greenway separately because there's a part of another route that is going through there.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you wish to put a statement in that an allowance should be made, for the passage of the Greenway, fine.
If you want to add I guess the question is, how should we state it to ensure, to cover the concern that was made about the Greenway's present relation to the property?
I think you can say that the sidewalks to be installed along Beach Drive shall be designed in order to accommodate for the Greenway as approved by the town engineer and the planning and zoning administrator.
Very good.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Vigliotti?
Very good, yes.
Okay, very good. Any further comments from members? Okay, Mr. Hibansky.
Just some thoughts on how we might want to articulate some of these conditions of approval, since some of the comments were received after I listed some conditions that you might want to consider. One, that the applicant shall receive a letter from the town engineer that all of his comments have been addressed, and that the plans shall be updated accordingly when they're submitted for to be filed on land records. A similar letter shall be obtained by the applicant from the conservation administrator that the plantings and all of recommendations have met her satisfaction. Something new that the town is going to be embarking on, and that starts July 1st, is the MS4 stormwater management permit that the town is required to follow for the state of Connecticut. In that plan, in that management plan, we're going to be requiring that any new development have a letter signed by a licensed engineer, paid for by the applicant, be submitted to ensure that the development is in compliance with the MS4 permit. And the last was that, just to reiterate, I know the applicant had agreed to it, but I think it's a good idea to get it as a condition of approval, that the sidewalks be composed of permeable material that's has been approved by the town engineer. That's it.
Those are addenda to the motion?
I guess, let me just ask you one question. There's a lot. Let me just ask you one question about that, specifically the program that was beginning July 1st. As we're at June 20th, are you saying that we're going to advance that by 10 days?
You could.
Okay, is that a substantial problem for the applicants? Were they aware of this condition, or?
I don't know what the applicants were aware of. My guess that the engineer designing it might have been aware that as of July 1st, MS4 permits for the state of Connecticut. No?
For this very rare occasion, because this is a point of clarification, I'll allow the
The plan has been designed in accordance with stormwater management and DEP, but because you're submitting before July 1st, it's not compliant with that MS4 program. And I don't know, the MS4 program has different, to my understanding, has different facets depending on whether you're in Stratford, Stanford, or Stafford Springs. And so no one's been paying much attention to it until it actually comes up and rears its head. Now it's coming up on July 1st. If you make that a condition of approval, we'll review it. But it's my understanding that that program is basically pretty much a replication of the stormwater permits that we're now presently doing.
So then it shouldn't be a problem for them to be able to
It shouldn't be a problem, but we can discuss it.
Okay.
And we'll do whatever we can to accommodate the time.
Okay, as long as that's been understood. I didn't want to, surprise somebody with something coming in 10 days before the start of a new program. So,
And just as a point to all the other commissioners, the zoning commission, this is starting to become a standard condition of approval for any development, basically going forward, even ones that are for the zoning commission that are coming up at the end of this month prior to July 1st.
okay. So, Mr. Vexi and Mr. Vigliotti, you guys get all of these today. So, do you accept that list of conditions, or do you need further explanation? Because there was a lot thrown at you in there.
I don't need any more explanation.
I accept.
You accept? Okay. Aren't you folks glad you didn't second those? Okay. Anything further on this? We're going to have a lot of fun writing this letter. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
no.
No.
Okay, motion carries 4-1. It's approved. Okay, thank you. I'll call you.
Just leave the lollipop.
Okay, moving on, we got a few other things tonight. The approval of the minutes of the May 16, 2017 meeting
So moved.
by Mr. Vexi. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Vigliotti. Any changes, corrections, clarifications on the minutes? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Zoning referrals and other items. Text amendment, section 5.3.16 for redevelopment and/or adoption of an existing building. Mr. Habansky?
Okay,
Do your best. This was a good one. I'm a little confused as to what they're trying to accomplish, but go ahead.
So we received an application for a text amendment to section 5.3.16, which is essentially a redevelopment regulation that allows some flexibility for developers to redevelop existing properties into either more updated uses and to allow for that redevelopment, which is called for in the Plan of Conservation and Development. The applicant submitted some requests for amendment to that application, most notably a waiver of setbacks, a waiver of impervious area, which is basically, grass. They don't have to meet the landscaping requirement, as well as parking. Now, it should be mentioned that this application is in conjunction with a site plan application trying to convert a parcel on Barnum Avenue from retail to purely residential. But separate from that, just by looking at the proposed text amendment, I had some concerns. First, I was having a hard time making a connection between reducing the minimum lot area per living unit from 20,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet based on the fact that there's a liquor permit has been held at that site. I don't know why how one relates to the other, and I was confused, to say the least, about that one. Second, the text amendment is looking to seek relief from section 12.5.2, which are the parking requirements. Just as a point of clarification, there are 11 opposed. Separate from this, there are 11 proposed units at the development site, and they would only be providing 9 parking spaces if they're granted this relief from the parking requirement. That drew some concern for me. Where everyone would be parking, would now someone be required to be parking out on the street? So that drew a bit of a red flag for me. Let's see. Last is really just how the text amendment itself serves as a long-range planning tool for the benefit of the town. How does it further the plan of conservation and development, and not just this singular property? I felt the text amendment seemed a bit narrow and not quite as comprehensive as we like to see for some of our text amendments, to benefit the public interest, not just the interest of a singular property. So, I think that there are some consistencies. There are some consistencies and some inconsistencies with what they're proposing. It could potentially allow for more compact development in targeted areas. I think Barnum Avenue is an area where we could see some elevated density potential. But at the abandonment of commercial uses on that first floor, Stratford has limited commercial corridors. We've got Barnum Avenue, we've got Main Street, and I think that there's a tendency to see those retail uses recede at the expense of residential development. So I think there needs to be that balance. And essentially, I didn't think that the text amendment was either consistent or inconsistent with the plan of development. There was equally consistent and equally inconsistent. And some of the points that I mentioned before were just confusing, and they drew some concerns.
Almost seems like they're trying to back into a regulation to sort of serve one application, though. At least that was my impression on it. I mean, even just where it starts off at 25 years old, I mean, that's only going back to 1992. It's not that old of a building.
No, it's not. And I agree. I mean, it was a bit peculiar.
Questions or comments from members? Because we'll have to make a recommendation one way or the other to the zoning commission. Mr. Vexi?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
I agree fully with Jay's comments. They are pretty much the same ones that I've jotted down over here. It leaves too much for open space, and if accepted, could result in a great mass distortion of the parking effects onto it, based against the size of the apartment. Okay, I do not feel we should recommend this.
Okay. Other comments from members? No? Would you like to make that a motion, sir? Motion to refer with an unfavorable recommendation, I think, would be the appropriate motion.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Vexi to refer it with an unfavorable recommendation. Is there a second? Ms. Petoskey? Any further comments? Very well. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Moving on. And of course, I lost my agenda again. Oh, come on. Let me see yours. Campsite review. Thank you. Campsite review for 60 Beach Drive, 3-lot subdivision. Mr. Hibansky?
This is just an extension of the subdivision approval. My recommendation would be that as a condition of approval, the applicant follow all recommendations made by DEEP.
A deep?
Department
By
of Energy,
yeah.
Environmental Protection.
Okay. Can we have a motion to that effect?
So
Mr. Vexi, is there a second? Mr. Vigliotti, further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Carries unanimous. Yes or no?
No, I want them to follow.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to check. You know, didn't want to rush through you. Okay. Okay, 5-0. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go. Any 824 reviews?
No.
Anything new on POCD?
No.
And actually, this one I know is probably going to foster some discussion. 5.3 of the zoning regulations.
Yeah, so based on our conversations that we've been having probably for the past 8 months here about Section 5.3 and how we thought this would be the best way to deal with the bedroom cap, which is essentially a cap on apartment development here in the town of Stratford. We took a lot of the recommendations that we discussed here. We put them in a report in a proposed development a proposed text amendment for an initial review by the Zoning Commission. We probably spent at least 3 administrative sessions discussing Section 5.3 at length. This is a really tough amendment for myself to bring before the commission bring before any land use board because I think there's a lot of concern in town about apartment development, and what I'm proposing is that we fix the section in the regulations that is essentially defunct. It no longer allows for any more apartment development. As a certified planner, it's my duty to not ignore a defunct regulation. I think it would be unethical from my perspective to at least not propose a change that would organically address the amendment while not altering the review process. So anyways, long story short, the zoning commission felt that it was just too big of a change for them to make at the moment. They want to potentially explore setting up a committee to dig deeper into the regulation. So that's what they decided to do. So they decided not to act on the amendment that we proposed and to table it for the time being. That's my report.
Any questions on that item? Okay, very good. Status on research of medical marijuana regulations and methadone clinics. I thank everybody for coming and attending that meeting that we had earlier today. It was actually very educational, and I think the next step will be for us to get our group together and I know I do apologize, some members got a little shortchanged on the time. It's just, we're doing the best we can to coordinate everybody's schedules. I'll be talking to Mr. Urbanski and Ms. Phillips and see if we can get another time together where not only can we see if there's an opportunity for more questions, but have some discussion and start bringing, okay. Yeah. Don't even have to do that. Start getting to the point where we can develop policy and take a look at the drafts that were given to us to try to move forward on that. Again, that's one of our goals, to try to get that something in place by the time we adjourn at the end of the year. Anybody want to bring up on that particular item that was not covered, or you'd like to continue to see this? Continue? No? Okay. Erosion and sediment control plan. Apparently we have one to consider that for Beach Drive, 60 Beach Drive. It's on the agenda, so we can discuss it. So why don't you talk to us about that?
The only recommendations that I have would be the conditions of approval for the soil erosion sediment control that I outlined in my staff comments. I can quickly go over them. They're pretty standard for most soil and erosion applications that we've had for the town. First is that all necessary siltation and erosion controls be in place, and the zoning enforcement officer notified for an inspection prior to any site or construction work being performed. B, immediate on-site modification shall be employed when an erosion problem develops. And C, in evaluating this application, the Commission has relied on information provided by the applicant, and if such information subsequently proves to be inaccurate or incomplete, this approval may be modified, suspended, or rescinded. So it's my recommendation that we adopt those, that you attach those as conditions of approval.
Okay, any questions on the report of Mr. Urbanski? If not, we'll take a motion to approve. Mr. Vigliotti, is there a second? Mr. Vexi, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Anything new on our implementation plans? Obviously, we talked about the Greenway a little bit, but Mr. Vexi or Mr. Watson, anything you want to add on the Greenway?
The most we could add at the Greenway is the latest petition we have for the extension is in the budget hearings.
Yes, there's a lot of things tied up in budget hearings these days, including our town planner. I don't even know if it's in any of the drafts that have been proposed, but yeah, the council hasn't passed a budget yet. But anything else you want to add? Anything on complete streets or coastal resiliency, or are we pretty much wrapping those up?
Well, the Complete Streets Phase 1, the plan is done. I'm currently pushing forward on the pilot project, which is for Stratford Center. We are approaching the 25 to 30% full construction design completion in the next few weeks, and we'll be closing out the grant. So that looks really good, looks really good on the town, that we have spent all the planning money, or any leftover money we've spent and put towards design. I'm already applying for the construction money for this project, as well as the design fees associated with our next two projects for complete streets.
Next two?
Next two. Hey, you can always negotiate. You can't negotiate up. Especially since we were so efficient at spending this money down, I think it has positioned the town and given the OPM some confidence that we can keep pushing forward, because they need OPM needs good news on these projects just as much as we do. And then the coastal resiliency plan, we are slowly working our way towards prioritizing our action steps. One of them is the MS4 permit, and that's a big lift for the town, especially since we're pretty short-staffed. So that the permit's been done and will be effective July 1st.
Very good.
Can I?
Yes, sir.
In terms of the permits, the whatever.
MS4.
I actually was reading up on those, and I was trying to read up on Stratford, and they are being very strict with us. It's not the way it always has been. We're having to do a lot of new things that we have not done before in terms of stormwater exiting into the sound and everything else. They're getting a lot stricter with the kinds of things that we can do in this new permit. From what I've read about it, do you have any information on that?
I can send you the permit.
Can you?
Yeah, and I can just tell you that a lot of the conditions that you're going to start seeing, mainly with the Zoning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals, is that sidewalks now be permeable pavers, permeable asphalt, so that water goes directly through them, filtrates into the ground. Those conditions are directly related to the MS4 permit. Like I said before, an independent engineer write a letter of compliance saying that this project complies with the MS4 permit, and we have our town engineer verify
So that will affect Complete Streets and our own Greenway project.
As well as tracking how much impermeable surfaces we have now, and every year how much we're reducing that per development. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
But does that also control the on-site water, all on-site water staying on-site? Is that part of this new increased regulations?
What we have in there in our zoning regulations now is a result of the last permit. That was 8 years ago, I think? Maybe 5 years ago? I don't remember offhand. But they just renewed it every year instead of making towns, municipalities reapply. This has been the first one in, I think, 5 or 6 years that towns have actually had to reapply and get their permits approved.
So French drains and rain gutter systems and all that is actually a reality for us.
Yep.
Okay, any members' comments or concerns on any items? We've covered an awful lot of territory, and one thing I'll just add is I appreciate, Mr. Bansky, your efforts, and I know a few members were there for the discussion on Stratford Center. I'm not trying to turn that into a discussion, but I appreciate the fact that it seemed like you had a good turnout and hopefully some good ideas coming for the long-term development there, so that's good. We have our next meeting on July 18th. Again, we're coming into the summertime, so if you think you're going to be away on vacation or have more exciting plans than being at a planning commission meeting, I know we're pretty enthralling around here, but one never knows, just let either Mr. Hibansky or myself know, and of course we'll get an alternate to sit in. Thank you, Ms. Tremasani, for joining us this evening. We'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Vexy, is there a second? Ms. Patesky, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. We're out of here at 8:17 p.m. Thanks, everyone.